What are those who are now going to be raised by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Clearly, number one and most important of all is Dajjal. Clearly, most important of all is Dajjal. And tonight we're going to spend a little time on Dajjal. It's going to be Gog and Magog. And since we already dealt with the subject on the subject of Imam al-Mahdi and the return of the Khilafah, we need not go back to Gog and Magog. And number three, Dabbatul Ard. They're now going to be raised against Banu Israel and inflict upon Banu Israel until the last day the worst possible punishment. Who is Dajjal? I want to urge you to study this subject with great care. But when you want to study the subject of Dajjal, it isn't like studying physics. You must turn the heart to Allah. Cleanse and purify the heart. Make 2 rakat nafs salat, for example. And beg Him with tears in your eyes, "Oh Allah, kindly guide me that I may understand this subject. When you make me understand it, it will be so easy for me. But if you do not open the veils, not even with a PhD will I be able to understand the subject of Dajjal." This is my advice to you before I leave you. When they boasted of what they did to the true Messiah, they rejected him. He can't be the Messiah because he's a bastard, wa na'udhu billah min hadha, etc. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responded to this. He created Dajjal, who is a person, not a system, a person. And endowed Dajjal with awesome power, awesome versatility, and a PhD in deception. When Dajjal is released into the world, it would be after the door to mercy is closed to Banu Israel. Only then would he be released into the world. And now with the change in Qibla, we know the door to mercy is now closed. When Dajjal is released into the world, his basic function is to impersonate the Messiah. This is why he's known as Al-Masih al-Dajjal. If he is to impersonate the Messiah and convince the Jews that he is indeed the Messiah, then he'd have to rule the world from Jerusalem with what would appear to be the end of history, eternal rule. In order for him to do that, logical deduction, number one, he'd have to liberate the Holy Land of non-Jewish rule. Number two, he'd have to bring the Jews back to the Holy Land, not as tourists, but to reclaim the land as theirs. Number three, he'd have to restore a state of Israel in the Holy Land and get the Jews to believe that this is the Israel of Nabi Dawood alayhi salam and Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam. Of course it would not be. But since they only see with one eye, they're deceived. And number four, which has not as yet happened, which is about to happen. I suggested to you when I came last December that maybe this is going to take place within the next 5 to 10 years. Maybe even less than that. But remember, this is only guesswork on my part. I can be wrong. What I know for certain, it's going to be soon. That I know. That he has to cause the state of Israel to become the ruling state in the world, and that's where I want to spend some time tonight. So let's get quickly with the lecture. When Dajjal is released, therefore, this is what Dajjal will have to do. Eventually rule the world from Jerusalem with what would appear to be eternal rule. And Banu Israel then would be taken on a ride. And it will be the last ride on which they'll ever go. Yeah? This will be the most fantastic act of deception ever recorded in history. This one. So we are living in fascinating times if we'll only take a little time to study the book of Allah and to study the word of the Prophet ﷺ with 2 eyes, not with one. When Dajjal is released, said the Prophet ﷺ, he will live on earth for 40 days, one day like a year, one day like a month, one day like a week, and the rest of his days like your days. Sahih Muslim. This hadith is so important that we got an artist in Malaysia to take this hadith and design the cover of this book with 3 circles there. You can see the 3 circles. One day like a year, one day like a month, one day like a week. And the rest of his days will be like your days. When his day is like our day, he's living in our dimension of time. Anybody differs with him? When he's living in our dimension of time, we'll be able to see him. The Prophet ﷺ described him. He'll be a Jew, be a young man, powerfully built, curly hair. Of course, we understand the 2 eyes. The left eye symbolizes external vision. The right eye, which is blind, symbolizes internal blindness. But if you differ with me, that's your privilege. That's your privilege. When Dajjal is released and his day is like our day, where would he be on earth? Of course, he has to be in Jerusalem, ruling the world from Jerusalem. And the Jews are now absolutely convinced this is the Messiah. This is the man. That one on the cross was false. This is the man. Why? Because the Jews have been ruling the world. Because the golden age has come back. And therefore this must be the true Messiah.